It's January 26th, and the strange side of history awaits. Today, we have a gem torn from the earth that seemed unreal, children who walked away and were never seen again, and a glowing screen that started it all. Let's begin. On January 26th, 1905, deep in the soils of South Africa, something impossible caught the light. During a routine inspection at the Premier Mines, surface manager Frederick Wells noticed a strange glimmer embedded in the rock wall, barely 18 feet below the surface. At first, he dismissed it. Diamonds simply didn't grow that large. When the stone was pried free, disbelief turned to suspicion. The object was enormous, 3,100 carats, and heavier than a human heart, and larger than any diamond ever recorded. So large, in fact, that Wells reported to assumed it had been a prank, a chunk of glass, a hoax planted by miners, but it was real. The stone was later named after Thomas Cullinan, the mine's founder. Fearing theft, authorities staged an elaborate deception. A decoy diamond crossed the ocean under an armed guard, while the real one traveled quietly through ordinary mail. Eventually, the stone was cut apart and formed into 9 large stones and about 100 smaller ones. The largest of the new stones is called the Great Star of Africa. It's 530.2 carats and is currently set in the head of the British sovereign's royal scepter with cross. On January 26, 1966, a normal summer morning in Australia quietly turned into one of the country's most haunting mysteries. 9-year-old Jane Beaumont, her sister Arna, just 7, and their 4-year-old brother Grant boarded a bus alone. It was a short trip, one they've made before. They were expected home by lunchtime, but they never returned. Witnesses later recall seeing the children laughing and playing with a tall, thin man in his 30s, sun-tanned, well-spoken, and completely unknown. He didn't look like a threat, but that's what makes the story so unsettling. At a nearby shop, the children bought food using a 1-pound note, money their parents insisted they did not have when they left home. It was the last confirmed sign that they were alive. As hours passed, then days, then years, the search intensified. Tips flooded in, suspects emerged, but then vanished. Locations were excavated, confessions were whispered, but none led to answers. In 2005, investigators conducted a final excavation at a former factory site linked to a person of interest, but nothing was found. Their parents, Jim and Nancy Beaumont, died without ever knowing what really happened to their children. Time may bury the evidence, but not the questions. For their parents, the mystery didn't end, it just followed them to the grave. On January 26, 1926, in a narrow building tucked into London's Soho district, the future flickered to life. Inside a small laboratory, Scottish inventor John Logie Baird invited a handful of witnesses to see something no human had ever seen before. The room was dim, the equipment rattled and hummed. What he called a televisor looked more like a contraption from a seance than a scientific breakthrough. Rotating metal discs spun rapidly, tearing images apart, pulling them back together as pulses of light and shadows. There was no sound, no color, just a ghostly glow. Then, a face appeared. Faint, blurry, unstable, but unmistakably human. Those watching, including members of the Royal Institution and a reporter from the Times, stared as a living person's likeness moved across the screen for the first time in history. It wasn't a recording, it wasn't a photograph, it was happening now. Elsewhere in the room, transmitted by wires and light. Later that same year, he pushed further, experimenting with infrared imaging machines that could see in total darkness. He filed patents and refined the system and unknowingly opened the door that could never be closed again. Every screen today traces back to that dim room in Soho. The future appeared, blinking in silence. Another day, another strange bite from history. Like, comment, and subscribe. Your next eerie dose is just a day away.